10 minutes past 8 here on the Radio Wammo Breakfast. It's time for State of It.
Opposition parties say the Prime Minister shouldn't be involved in negotiations with SkyCity to build a convention centre in Auckland. John Key has confirmed he approached SkyCity inviting the company to tender for the convention centre contract. Part of the deal involves a law change allowing the SkyCity casino to have more pokie machines. Now it's emerged that Key's Chief of Staff Wayne Eagleson is close friends with SkyCity lobbyist Mark Unsworth.
Well, it's a seedy, sordid, preferential deal for a foreign-owned operation and behind closed doors. It's very, very inappropriate.
But Key says he approached a number of different parties about building the convention centre and was no more involved than that.
So that there is a TV3 news report into the SkyCity debacle that just keeps on rolling on at the moment. And Selwyn Manning is along from livenews.co.nz to talk more about this with us. Good morning, Selwyn.
Yeah, good morning, Glenn.
Yeah, certainly plenty of opportunity for the opposition parties, especially while John Key is out of the country, to take advantage of this rolling maul of a controversy.
Rolling maul, I couldn't put it better myself, Glenn. I mean, that's a fantastic illustration. Yeah, the opposition bloc, it's clearly got its major opportunity here, and its strategy is to paint the Prime Minister as a dodgy operator. And all the way through this week, you can see that the opposition bloc, led by the Labour team, Winston Peters, New Zealand First, and the Greens too, the Greens taking a very cautious and considered and detailed approach to this whole issue, is one where the strategy of that opposition bench is working in tandem with the parties of the opposition bench working in tandem with each other to get a result. If you listen to the news clips throughout the week, you'll hear words not necessarily saying John Key is dodgy, but they'll say, John Key's actions on this, blah, 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 it gives the impression of being dodgy, or, this is dodgy practice.
Yeah.
So they're saying the actions are dodgy. They know that if they, in the past, I think the opposition politicians, been cautious to attack John Key directly as a person, in a sense, because the popular appeal was there in the last term to the degree where there was a backlash. It was like someone insulting your favourite uncle or something, And so in this term, that's a different story, but they'll attack the actions that John Key is employing. And I think what that does too is it ropes in the whole of the cabinet into such a criticism as well. It's led by John Key, but it's influenced by John Key, and we can see every time a cabinet minister comes out to justify the actions taken by the leader, they get embroiled in this whole thing of something stinks around this whole mess.
Well, what's also so interesting is that John Key hasn't attempted to offload the blame for this onto anyone else. In fact, he doesn't see that there is blame to be had. In fact, he's admitted that the whole idea was his in the first place.
He seems to think that it's probably the circles he's been moving in, and certainly he's addressing the needs and the requests and the wants of the stakeholder groups around the National Party on these things. So he's probably quite comfortable in that space, of thinking, okay, I'm the kind of guy that is going to deliver to these guys that have been supporting the National Party for eons. That the whole issue of I can circumnavigate red tape to get something moving for the betterment of this group of people, well, then I'm going to be seen as a Prime Minister, a National Party Prime Minister that delivers. But of course, even though a certain degree of process had been followed in this SkyCity convention issue, or the convention centre issue, if you like, Ministry of Economic Development put it through a process. But the whole thing was overseen, if you like, by the Prime Minister's influence on showing preferences in this whole deal. And I suppose it comes down to that. I mean, we've seen news reports, and the listeners would have seen and heard news reports all through this week on the details. So I suppose we don't need to reiterate those. But the big crux of this is his ethical judgment. And if you look at the opposition party's strategy, what they're trying to do is to peel that away, and it's almost exposing John Key by degrees. Even yesterday, when the public mood was such that it was demanding, that it be a fair process that is to be seen to have occurred, and that fairness seems to have been rendered obsolete in a sense by the Prime Minister approaching the SkyCity for this deal.
Yeah.
So that whole thing there shows quite an indifference to the Kiwi way, and certainly if he had done that, and he has, as the supreme leader of the country, kind of influenced the Ministry of Economic Development's process in that trade thing, and that's what it appears to have done.
Yeah.
Well, then why wouldn't he open it up to scrutiny as the opposition parties have called for?
Yeah.
You know, you can see that they're exposing John Key even on his ethical judgment relating to tidying this mess up.
Well,
I thought John sorry.
Well, I was going to say one detail that ties in with this that has been sort of dropped from the discussion about this week is the fact that John Drinnan, I think at the Herald, uncovered this in early March, that some of the TVNZ buildings were to be demolished across the road from SkyCity to make way for this convention centre. TVNZ had no idea that this was actually going to happen, and an insider at SkyCity wouldn't reveal what or how they assumed or knew that this was in fact going to happen, and why on the architect plans this expansion was happening, and it suggests that SkyCity had been given the nod by a minister, and TVNZ wasn't even told. So that's another detail and a piece of the puzzle of this whole...
piece in the puzzle.
Yeah.
And Glenn, you know, the way you put it there, it's a crucial piece because it shows that there is momentum, and once again, it underlines this impression of backroom deals going ahead. And it's also out of step with the whole, you know, the Auckland Council and its process relating to resource management. As far as I can see, that act still exists. But if the Prime Minister is leading the charge on such things, it's almost like a smiling Muldoon without the scar. You know, this is tampering into the way things have been. It's wiping, it's obsolete really, the way and the process of way things have been done. And I think from a strategy point of view, what the opposition parties are starting to actually be very effective on is connecting these dots, that this isn't an isolated situation, that it goes right back to the method that was used to ensure that the Warner Brothers company, a film production company in the States, was going to have the Hobbit produced here in New Zealand. You know, the things to assure, in the legislation changes, you know, and the regulatory kind of models that were put to make sure that they were going to do, the meetings with John Key, for example, to ensure that they were going to be here. Now, that all of this type of stuff is not, you know, with that Hobbit deal, it's not necessarily a thing that has been contrary to New Zealand's interests here, but it's the tampering with the process to get there. And some would say, oh, well, it's great that, you know, the bureaucracy is broken down, that we've got a leader who's prepared to go in there, pull things, you know, together and actually get things done. Well, you know, that's a valid point. But at the same time, what it's doing is putting all of the choice in the hands and into the mind of one person. You've got to remember that this national party that's in government didn't even get the support at the last election of half of the country. Yeah. So it means that the majority didn't vote for these guys. And really it's a bit rich for them to be walking and strutting and grandstanding around the country and altering the way that things are done here.
Very interesting take on the scenario, and also interesting to note, we were going to play the item, but I don't think we need to, but there was a poll done by TV3 last night that goes against what John Key was thinking. John Key said, no, I'll have the public on my side, but in fact 71% of respondents to this poll disagreed with SkyCity having more pokies for a convention centre as well. Selwyn at livenews.co.nz is where you'll also view this as a video once more. That has been State of It. We'll see you next week.
Okay, bye-bye.
20 minutes.